everybody. I got this video response from this guy who had made a video response to my addressing shock stealing my audio, where I was talking about different things that are minor pagan practices like orgies and animal sacrifice and things like that. And I just wanted to respond on some of the things that this guy said, so I'm going to make a video response to him, just addressing some of his points. All right, here we go.
You were addressing the thing of adultery and fornication.
No, actually, I wasn't really addressing adultery and fornication. I was addressing sex. Because I, as a pagan, do not believe sex is sinful. And there's no really logical reason to believe sex is sinful.
Hi guys, I'm Prince Christopher here. I just want to say one thing in regards to sex being a sin. Now, like so many other Christians, he goes through, for example, talking about how sex is a sin. But he goes through and he doesn't explain why sex is a sin. Why is sex a sin? Why? What is sin? And why is it a sin?
And how Shoko now was saying, well, you look at pagans, they get involved in orgies and things like that, and premarital sex. And I just want to say this. As a Christian, I'm not going to judge the behavior of someone who's not a Christian because they don't know the God that I know.
I just want you to follow along with this video, and under the images here in the text, you'll see that I've made note of many people who, quote-unquote, know the God that he knows, and still lead, but what a Christian standard is, a very sinful life.
There's no such thing as a Christian. There is no such thing as a 100% Christian. Such a person does not exist.
And you see, once you become a Christian and you're born again, then God starts to change your morals and your behavior patterns. And
I have a big problem with that statement, and here's why. You yourself said that Christians sin just like everybody else. So now you're saying somehow that God changes your morals and stuff like that. I find that to be crap. Secondly, I know tons of Christians who are quote-unquote born again, who are the most sinful people I ever know. And third, personally experienced, my boyfriend was a Hellfire Baptist, born again, and he was and still is one of the most sexually active people I know. So I just don't get the logic there, not at all.
So I never look at a pagan or an atheist or an agnostic and say, well, why are you behaving like that? I mean, I understand that they are going to behave differently to born-again Christians because they don't follow the precepts of the Bible.
And I think the thing that you don't understand here is that they don't. Christians, there's more Christians in jail than there are atheists. If you take the percentage of atheists in this country and the percentage of Christians in this country as a population of a whole, and then you take the population in prison, there are more percentage-wise Christians in prison than there are atheists by a landslide. Same with pagans and everything else.
They disregard or ignorant or don't accept the precepts of the Bible.
And which precepts of the Bible are those? Are those the ones that say that women should marry their rapists? Are those the ones that say that women shouldn't speak in church or be educated unless their husbands tell them to? Which precepts of the Bible are you speaking of that are today's morals that Christians are supposed to follow? Because as far as I can tell, there's a lot of things that are quote-unquote moral in the Bible that we today do not see as moral. For example, slavery.
I mean, don't forget that Jesus even said, he said, if you look upon a woman and you lust after her, you have committed adultery in your heart.
And this is exactly why the morals of the Bible are full of shit. Because everybody lusts after someone. Okay? If you're gay, you lust after someone of the same sex. If you're straight, you lust after someone of the opposite sex. Bisexual, you lust after everybody, unless you're asexual, which is a very minor amount of the population, you're gonna lust. It's our nature to lust. And that's why pagans don't consider it sinful. Because it's our nature. And what sort of cruel God would create a being with such natural carnal desires and then say, don't do that? It's absolutely ridiculous. This is one of the reasons why it's so obvious that the Bible is flawed. Because Our nature is to be sexual beings, and there's nothing wrong or evil about sex. You know, you can sit here and lecture about the dangers of STDs, but it's all crap. And here's why. If your God would have wanted people to stay away from danger, that he wouldn't glorify war. It makes no sense to demonize sex unless one wants to control the population, which obviously the ancient Jews needed to control their population because they were transitioning from one culture to the next. As for the reason Jesus did, who knows? But the whole point of the nature is that there's nothing wrong with sex, and there's no logical reason to ban it.
Some pagans might be very faithful to their spouse, but we know that many pagans do engage in premarital sex.
And so do many Christians engage in premarital sex. I went to a Christian high school, and the graduating class of that Christian high school, 30% of the women were pregnant. 30% of the women were pregnant. And it was a Christian school. So, the whole idea that, somehow Christians have better morals or something like that, it's ridiculous. Like I said, we're humans. Humans are sexual beings, and there's nothing wrong with premarital sex either. It's just our own stupid society that tells us we need to be married to have children and to have sex. I mean, seriously, it's ridiculous.
They regard it as normal. They don't regard it as sinful. And as you said yourself, some of them even engage in orgies, and for them there's nothing wrong with that.
First of all, it's pronounced orgies. I understand you're foreign, but that's alright. Secondly, there is nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with sex in general. Yes, I believe that people should use protection and stop disease, and everything like that. I also think people should wear their seatbelts when they drive. I also think people should stay off the cell phone when they drive. But there's nothing in the Bible about staying off your cell phone while you drive. You want to know why? Because even though people claim that it to be a divine book, there's nothing prophetic in it. If there was like an 11th commandment that said, "Thou shalt not talketh on one's cell phone," then maybe we would believe this whole notion that the Bible is somehow prophetic in nature or divine in nature. But I see nothing divine. I just see another book of mythology when I look at the Bible. I don't see anything truth in it.
And it's interesting you mentioned that some pagans engage in animal sacrifices.
Yeah, because sacrificing an animal is so much worse than sacrificing a human being on a cross for one's own well-being. I also want to mention that there are probably way more pagans out there who consider themselves to be vegetarians or vegans than there are people who commit animal sacrifice. So, when you look at the population of a whole, which one is moral and which one isn't, people have their own morals.
We don't need any more animal sacrifices because the greatest sacrifice has been given, and that is the sacrifice of Jesus Christ.
Oh, here we go. Okay, first of all, you have no proof. Second of all, why would an omnipotent, omniscient God need to kill his son in order to save the world? It makes no sense. None whatsoever. None.
Perfect sacrifice. Jesus was God in human form. He lived a perfect life, spotless lamb, and he died for the sins of the world. Now, that is wonderful, and I think that's the sacrifice that we need to focus on.
So somehow killing someone and profiting from their death is okay and moral, but sex, that's just horrible.
I just want to say, as a Christian, I don't regard myself as better than...
So, wait a second, you don't think you're better than us, but you're somehow more enlightened than us. Is that what you're saying? Well, I'm sorry, if you're more enlightened, you think you're better. You can't just say, I think I'm more enlightened and more moral than you, but I'm not better than you.
But what's different between me and you, for example, is that I've received the grace that is found in Jesus Christ.
What's different between you and me? We have the same natural desires. You just choose to repress those, to live an unhappy life in hopes for the next one. I choose to live a happy life and look forward to my next reincarnation.
Whereas you and many others have rejected the grace that is found in Jesus Christ. And that's the difference.
So, is that what Ted Haggard did, or Jim Baker, Jimmy Swaggart, all the priests who molested little boys? it seems to me that God's grace comes in a funny form.
And so, Blue Fire Witch, I encourage you to receive God's grace.
You know, funny story, when I was 15, I really did want to receive your God's grace. And I asked for it, and nothing ever happened. Because it doesn't exist.
That is revealed to us through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. That's the ultimate sacrifice, and there's no more need for any further sacrifices.
So if there's no need for further sacrifice, then why do we have to give up having sex? Because that's a pretty big damn sacrifice. Not to mention, you know, for a woman to live a quote-unquote Christian life and live by the Bible, she basically has to be subservient to her husband. That's a pretty big damn sacrifice.
Take care now, and may the Creator God, the one and only living God, bless you.
Well, for my ending remarks, I'd like to say that, you know, there is no one true living God. Your concept of God came from my concept of the gods. And, you know, the idea that you have the truth and we don't, well, I'm sorry, you're wrong about that, and I'm never going to believe that.